Hello, I'm Micker 410. Welcome to my channel where I focus on 3-inch revolvers and 410 shot shells. Let's check out today's video. Welcome to today's video. This video is going to be an overview of all the calibers that we're covering on this channel. This is our third overview video, and the first two overview videos we did covered the 3-inch revolvers that we will be using as our test platforms. This video is going to cover all the calibers and the 410 bore shot shells that we're going to cover on this channel. And then we'll have one additional video, maybe two, doing an overview of the 410 shot shell platforms that we're going to use on this channel to test 410 bore shot shells. So, we got a lot to cover in this video. I'm not going to talk too much about each caliber. I'm just going to give a date on it, a little discussion about my feelings on the caliber, whether it's rimfire, center fire, rimmed, semi-rimmed, or rimless. And then, yeah, that's what it's going to be. You guys get it. I'm unscripted here, just going off the top of my head because we've got a lot of stuff to do and it's just sort of fun. So, to our right here, we're going to start off with the 22 caliber family. These are all of the rimfire cartridges that we're using on this channel, that we'll be testing on this channel. We have 22 short, 22 long, 22 long rifle, and 22 Magnum. Okay, so 22 short was invented, this guy right here, this little one, in 1857. And as far as I can tell, this is the oldest commercially available cartridge still available in the United States, and quite possibly the oldest cartridge made, brass cartridge. I'm not sure on that. All my information that I'm getting here, that's written down on the back of this envelope, is just straight from the internet. So you all know how reliable that is. If there's some detail that's wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. That's not a problem. One of those potentially wrong details might be about the 22 long. As far as I can tell, that was introduced in 1871. I don't have real good numbers on that one. And honestly, I don't really know why it exists. It's going to be fun to test, but as far as I can tell from data, it has the charge and bullet weight of a 22 short, but in a 22 long rifle case. So that'll be interesting. Then we've got our 22 long rifle, which was introduced in 1887. This is the most popular cartridge in the world, according to the internet. It's definitely one of the cheapest cartridges in the world. Everybody loves to shoot it, to plink with it, to train with it, to small game hunt with it. It is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. There's a million discussions about whether or not they're any good in semi-autos or lever actions or pump actions. I'm not concerned with any of that, because all we do here is revolvers. But it is quite often cited as the lowest recoil caliber to go with. And it will get you some of the highest capacities. The whole 22 family will. The revolvers or the revolver that we will be using on this channel to test these has a 9-round capacity. So a good discussion point for that, or a good reason for using 22 caliber, is for that capacity and that low recoil. And because in a revolver, if you have a failure to fire, which happens more often with rimmed cartridges, which these 4 are, you can just pull the trigger and move on to the next cartridge in the chamber, or the next chamber holding a cartridge. Whereas with a semi-auto or magazine-fed pistol, if you have a misfire or a jam or something occur with one of these, you have to go through the process of clearing it. So there are positives to it and there are downsides to it. but the one thing that cannot be disputed is it is crazy popular. Next to it is its bigger brother, the 22 Magnum. This was introduced in 1959, and for a long time on paper, before I knew the 32 caliber family existed, which we'll get to next, I thought that this was going to be my preferred caliber for EDC. And what I discovered was that I'm just not super comfortable with the reliability of rimfire cartridges. So they fail more than centerfire cartridges. Both fail. There's a lot to be said about 22 having a lower fail rate, or 22 Magnum having a lower fail rate than 22 LR. I don't know any of that. I haven't shot tens of thousands of rounds of either of these yet, the 22 WMR or the 22 LR, to be able to know if that's true. These are just things I read on the internet. But I do know that I have had a significant amount of rimfire failures with the 22 short and the 22 long rifle, that I'm not willing to trust the 22 WMR, which as far as I can tell is the same technology, in a situation that really needs it. So these are rimmed cartridges, which means at the base there is a rim that's wider than the body of the case, and that rim is what allows cartridges to be ejected by the ejection mechanism of a revolver. Okay, so if a revolver fires a cartridge, it has one of three ways to eject it. It can use a rod, which you see a lot in the old single action revolvers, which we won't really cover on this channel. It can have an ejection star, or it can use a moon clip. And the ejection star, and I know I'm getting that term wrong now that I say it twice in a row, will either engage with the rims at the base of a cartridge, or with the moon clip that will hold the rimless cartridges in it. So that's where that matters, rimmed or rimless cartridges. And one of our cartridges is a semi-rimmed cartridge, and we'll get to that one in just a moment. Okay, so next we have our 32 caliber family. We have the 32 Smith & Wesson, sometimes called the 32 Smith & Wesson Short. That's not what it's labeled as, but it's called that because a 32 Smith & Wesson Long does exist. And it came out in 1878. Right next to them, we have the 32 Smith & Wesson Long, which came out in 1896. This has been quite the popular cartridge for a long time, at least at the turn of the 18th to 19th century, or the 19th to 20th centuries, the 1800s to 1900s. Whew, talk about tongue twisting. For a while, this was a standard police cartridge, and nowadays it's really just used for target shooting and small game hunting. But from what I have learned, I feel like if you're going to recommend to someone a low recoil cartridge for everyday carry in a revolver, it should probably be this guy instead of the 22 long rifle. The reason for that is it is center fire. It's got a primer in the middle, and that center fire capability means that it requires a lighter trigger pull to set off the bullet safely. So the triggers will be stiffest and heaviest on our rimfire cartridges because it takes more oomph to strike the rim and set off the primer inside of it versus a center fire where it takes less energy. The recoil is comparable between the two, both very light, and you get significantly more energy out of that cartridge. And these, the revolvers that we will be testing these cartridges in, are 6-round capacity or 7-round capacity, which is on the higher end of what the capacities are. So to me, it's a very good compromise. You could get 7 rounds of 32 Smith & Wesson Long versus 9 rounds of 22 long rifle, or 6 rounds of 38 special, or 5, depending. So anyway, next to it is 32 H&R Magnum. That cartridge didn't come out until almost a century later in 1984. So 1896 to 1984. I feel like that gap kind of really killed the popularity of the 32 caliber family. 38s and 44s went through this whole Magnum transformation in the middle of the 1900s and kept them going for a long time. 32, it didn't get any sort of Magnum cartridge until the end of the 1900s. And so without having a Magnum cartridge to help it compete with the 357 Magnum and the 44 Magnum, I feel like maybe it really kind of lost a lot of ground and lost its chance to stay hyper relevant. But it is by far my favorite cartridge out of all of them. It gives the performance of a 38 special with a very mild recoil. I can get 7 rounds out of it. It's center fire. I just really like it as a caliber. And my preference for it is what really started this whole channel. I discovered that I liked that caliber. I tested it out in a 2-inch Taurus 327 and a 3-inch Charter Arms Professional Mark IV and 32 H&R, in the Ruger GP100 5.5 inch or 5 inch, I can't remember which. And that's how I settled in on 3-inch revolvers, was testing this caliber in those different sizes. And then once I dialed that in and decided that that was the one that I liked, so it's the one I've got the biggest bias on, then I wanted to test it against everything else. And that's why we have this entire array in front of us. Next to it is the 327 Federal Magnum. This one is very much a Magnum cartridge, and it is probably our newest cartridge out of the whole list. It was introduced in 2008. You'll get 6 shots of that. There is no 7-shot double action revolvers with a 3-inch barrel chambered in 327 yet. And I know there's a whole bunch of fans of 327 Federal Magnum that are just chomping at the bit for that. And Ruger does make a single 7, so they make a single action 3-inch revolver with a bird's head grip that is really tempting. If I didn't already have so many, I'd be tempted to grab that one as well. Okay, next to it we have 32 ACP. Now 32 ACP is interesting because it is our only semi-rimmed cartridge caliber out of all of these in front of us today. And what that means is that it does have a rim, it's just not a very big rim. And so depending upon your revolver, you may or may not be able to reliably fire these out of it. Now, my experience with the Charter Arms so far has been that I can reliably fire them out of it. My experience with my Taurus 327 is that I can reliably fire them out of it. And my experience with my Ruger GP100 is that I can reliably fire them out of it. I don't know about the Ruger SP101, which is going to be our primary platform for testing the 32 caliber family in this series of videos. And the main reason I'm doing that is because capacity isn't of importance during these tests, and because I want to reduce the amount of wear and tear on my Charter Arms revolvers as much as possible. Okay, so this then brings us to our next caliber, which is kind of an oddball. This is the 38 Smith & Wesson. It is not the precursor to 38 Special. That would be the 38 Long Colt. I don't have any 38 Long Colt. I have no idea where to find any 38 Long Colt. And what we will be firing it out of is our Ivor Johnson Model 3. And it has a 3¼ inch barrel. I wasn't really able to get a 3-inch barrel for that. Supplies are kind of, there's just not a lot of options with revolvers over a century old. So it's really there to kind of show us between the 32 Smith & Wesson, the 38 Smith & Wesson, the 22 short, and the 22 long rifle, what people were dealing with as far as self-defense capabilities in an everyday carry, pocketable revolver at the turn of the 20th century, at the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. And so I think it'll be very interesting to see its performance. Now, currently my understanding is that Ruger, or Remington, puts .357 or .357 caliber bullets in these cases, and that normally it should be like .361 or something like that. And so Remington currently is safe to shoot out of a 38 Special or .357 chambered revolver. But I wouldn't just go do that. You know, if you're gonna take that chance or whatever, I would measure everything with calipers. Some people on the internet say you can just do it. Other people say you shouldn't. I wouldn't mess with any of that. It's kind of this weird gray area, and it just seems unwise. So next to it, we have 38 Special. It was introduced in... Oh, I'm sorry. The 38 Smith & Wesson was introduced in 1877. And I missed the 32 ACP. The 32 ACP was introduced in 1899. Okay, so this guy was introduced in 1899. This guy was introduced in 1877. The 38 Special showed up in 1902. And the 357 Magnum showed up in 1935. So here we kind of have to talk about something. Revolvers were introduced back when gunpowder was still black powder, when it still produced smoke, and when it wasn't a very efficient powder. And so you had these long cases that you needed to pack in all the gunpowder needed to get the bullet where you wanted it to go, or to get the performance out of the bullet that you desired. Okay, so right around the turn of that century, right around the 1900s, smokeless powder got introduced. And smokeless powder, I don't know the exact date, but it performed significantly better. And so you didn't need to have as much powder in the cartridges to get the same performance out of a bullet. Well, this allows for a couple of things to happen. It allows for 32 ACP to come into existence. It allows for 9mm and 380 ACP to come into existence, and 45 ACP to come into existence. These short, squat, compact calibers that can provide good terminal performance but are significantly smaller in length, which makes them easy to put into magazines that go into pistol grips that your hand can wrap around. But its introduction didn't eliminate the millions of revolvers that already existed. So with improvements of metallurgy, with improvements in gunpowder, there was a revolution in powder charges for some of these pre-existing revolver cartridges. And that's how you end up with things like the 38 Special and the 357 Magnum. These longer cartridges Like the 38 Special generally performs with or generally has less energy than the 9mm, even though it's so much longer. And the 357 does provide a lot more energy than the 9mm, but it's only slightly bigger than the 38 Special. And the reason for that is because they couldn't just load 38 Special up with all the powder charge that they wanted, or that they could now with all of this extra space in it, because the guns weren't designed to handle that pressure. And so they had to make the calibers that had that increased capacity or that increased performance by utilizing the increased powder capacity a little bit longer, so they wouldn't physically fire in the physically fit into the revolvers and cause a misfire and perhaps a catastrophic one. So this is why you will see a lot of revolver cartridges as really long, and why you can get a whole wide array of performance variants in your revolver cartridges. It's because there's so much room to load the calibers to the performance level that you want. The biggest beneficiary of this is the 45 Colt, and we'll talk about that when we get to him at the end. Okay, so 38 Special, 1902, 357, 1935. Then we've got the 380 ACP, which was introduced in 1912. The 9mm, which was introduced in 1902. Same year as the 38 Special. But the 38 Special is longer than the 38 Long Colt, which is what it is special to. And that's why it has to be so long, so that you can't slide this into a pistol chambered for 38 Long Colt and have an issue. At least that is all my understanding of it. There may be a lot of nuance or exact detail that I have missed. Okay, so 380 ACP is going to be really interesting to shoot because it's going into the Charter Arms Pit Bull in 380. And it's the only rimless cartridge of the three up here. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, 5 up here that doesn't need a moon clip. And that's because the Charter Arms Pit Bull uses a interesting spring retention system that holds onto the 380 ACP brass just below its rimless rim, which sounds funny to say. All right, and then the 9mm, this guy will be shot out of our Taurus 905, and it's the first of our calibers that will be using moon clips. Then we have the 40 Smith & Wesson, which was introduced in 1990, and the 10mm, which was introduced in 1983. Both of these will be shot out of the GP100 that I have, the Ruger GP100, chambered in 10mm. And again, it benefits, or because it's a revolver, and revolvers benefit from being able to fire bullets in the smaller size of the same caliber. So, your 22 long rifle cylinder can chamber 22 long and 22 short. Your 327 Federal Magnum cylinder can chamber 32 H&R, 32 Smith & Wesson Long, 32 Smith & Wesson, and 32 ACP. Your 357 revolver can chamber your 38 Special, and maybe this guy, your 38 Smith & Wesson, but in reality it should be the 38 Colt, Long Colt, and then Colt, which we don't have either of. Technically, I guess, 9mm can chamber 380 ACP, but the 380 ACP case dimensions are different enough that 380 ACP doesn't fit well in 9mm moon clips. So that's a whole thing. And the 40 Smith & Wesson will chamber nicely in the 10mm. And the case dimensions are similar enough that the 10mm moon clips work just fine. Also, I'd like to take a moment to point out that this 10mm bullet is using an aluminum case. It's the only aluminum case that I have at the moment, and it's also the only 10mm ammunition that I have at the moment. So that's why we're seeing an aluminum case, but it works out since we're doing a whole caliber overview, and we can talk about it a little bit right now. I don't know what that means. I don't know if you can't reuse them as much. I don't know if they're more prone to failure. I don't know anything about aluminums. We're going to find out. It's going to be interesting. Okay, so here we have our 410 bore shot shells. These are in this review because 410 bore shot shell, it has just been shoved into every action imaginable. It's a decent size. It's not terribly big. And people like the idea of shotguns and having lots of different possible platforms for shotguns. So this guy is going to be shot out of Derringers, revolvers. We've got the Governor for that. Bolt actions, pump actions, lever actions, brake actions, side-by-sides, long barrel smooth bores, revolvers, magazine fed semi-autos, and we just have so many platforms for this. And each platform really only does well with one or two kind of loadings out of 410, and that's kind of interesting. And that's another reason why this channel got started. I haven't seen anyone do a real deep dive into as many different 410 loadouts as possible across as many different 410 platforms as possible. And there are a ton of each. So any ammunition that we fire, we're going to be shooting out of all the same platforms. So, you know, this Home Guardian slug from BPS, we're going to shoot it out of every single 3-inch chambered platform I have and comparing the results. This 2.5-inch Brennecke slug, we will be shooting it out of every single 2.5-inch and 3-inch chambered 410 platform that I have and checking the results. Same thing with shot, with birdshot, with duplex loads, whatever. Crazy self-defense loads, we're going to be trying it out of all of them. So the age for 410 introduction that I have, and this one might also be wrong, is 1874. And my understanding is that it was actually introduced in a 2-inch length shell that nobody makes anymore in paper, which I don't have. So technically, if you had one, you could fire it out of anything chambered in 2.5-inch and 3-inch, theoretically. Yeah, probably not, now that I think about it more. Paper shells, I don't imagine, feed very well out of anything that's not just a break action, so or a revolver. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Nobody's got them. It's not happening. We're not trying it on this channel unless I come across them. All right, so over here we have 44 Special and 44 Magnum. 44 Special was introduced in 1908. 44 Magnum was introduced in 1955. Same thing with 38 Special and 357. There's only a small difference in case length, and that is mostly to protect people from putting a 44 Magnum in a 44 Special chambered revolver. I believe 44 Special is special to the 44 Russian. Might be the 44 Schofield. I can't remember which. I don't have either of them. I can't find either of them in stores. If I was a reloader, you know, I could play with that, but I'm not. So we'll just work with those two in our 44 Special, which will be the Smith & Wesson 629 Deluxe. And then over here our last two calibers are the 45 ACP, which was introduced in 1905, and the 45 Colt, which was introduced in 1873. Both of these are also going to be shot out of the Smith & Wesson Governor, which only has a 2.75 inch barrel. So it won't be a true comparison to all the 3-inch revolvers that will be firing the remainder of this ammunition. But it will be interesting. And to do the comparison, getting a 3-inch revolver is kind of difficult. And same thing with getting a 3-inch double action revolver in 45 Colt. There are other things that will modify the performance. The fact that the governor cylinder is long enough to fit this guy. So there will be a fair amount of travel before either of these bullets connect to the mouth of the barrel and engage in rifling. So these performances won't be perfect comparisons, like I said, but they will be informational and instructional. So this then leaves me to talk about the 45 Colt. Sometimes called the 45 Long Colt, even though there is no 45 short. Or just, yeah, this is the 45 Colt. This guy has the longest range of powder loadings. We will only be using regular smokeless powder loadings for this in the Smith & Wesson Governor because that's what's recommended in its manual. But there are quite stout 45 Colt loadings that are equivalent to or slightly stronger than 44 Magnum that you can fire out of some 45 Colt chambered revolvers. Ruger tends to make them. I believe they're Super Black Hawks, or 45 Colt modern lever guns. So 45 Colt is one that you kind of have to be careful when you buy ammo for it. You need to be aware of your 45 Colt chambered firearm, whether it's a lever gun or a revolver or a break action of some kind. You need to be careful with them and make sure that you're lining up the kind of charge that's in it with the kind of firearm that's designed to handle that charge. Because once 45 Colt switched from black powder to smokeless powder, there was a whole lot of case space left in there to really amp up the amount of boom that you could get from it. Okay, everyone, this is our... Oh, I almost forgot. I am sorry for all you revolver aficionados. You are probably really noticing a missing caliber here. I do not have anything in 41 Magnum. As far as I can tell, there's only really been one 3-inch 45 Magnum readily available or made available, and that was a Lou Horton Smith & Wesson Special model from the 80s. I saw one pop up on a gun auction site once, and it went for obscene amounts of money. So there will be no 41 Magnum 3-inch barrel revolver testing on this channel. Please, if you have one and you enjoy the channel, please feel free to do some testing on your own and share those numbers with us. That would be fantastic. Or, give it to me. I will happily take any 41 Magnum 3-inch Lou Horton revolver donations anybody wants to make. Otherwise, this is it. These are the calibers we're going to test. These are not the only ones we will be testing. We will be picking up multiple different loads and loadouts of them from a variety of different manufacturers. But I just wanted to get them all in one spot because most channels, when they do a caliber comparison, it's usually the caliber they're talking about, and then maybe the one right before it, and maybe the one right after it, or maybe they'll talk about the 45 ACP and the 9 mil and the 380 and the 38 special or whatever, the real common stuff. So I just wanted to get it all out here so you could see it all at once and kind of get an idea. And like I said, remember, they're rimmed rim fires, rimmed center fires, semi-rimmed center fires, and rimless center fires. Lots of interesting stuff, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with all of you guys. See you in the next one. Bye.